Bee here, and welcome back to biology. Today, we are going to talk about the intricate and fascinating process of the development of the organisms we know best, human beings. We'll start with a quick preview of the stages that occur before a human is born. In the months and weeks before you were born, you would have gone through a series of stages similar to these images. As we describe the steps of the process today, we'll use the term mother to refer to the individual giving birth. There are many people who call themselves mother who haven't or may be unable to physically give birth, while others who have given birth do not use the term. But for simplicity in this lesson, we will use the term mother to refer to the parent who gives birth in the reproductive process. Before we get started, let's look at our goals for this lesson. By the end, you'll be able to list and describe the stages a human goes through in their lifetime, and explain how processes such as mitosis, meiosis, and gene regulation contribute to the life cycle of a human. Human development begins with the gametes. Remember that these are the haploid cells produced by the reproductive organs through meiosis. Females produce egg cells, while males produce sperm cells. Both contain only half of the necessary chromosomes to make a human. When a sperm cell and an egg cell fuse, fertilization occurs, which forms a diploid zygote that now has all 46 chromosomes, 23 from each parent. Millions of sperm cells will likely be competing to fertilize the single egg cell, but once a single sperm cell has penetrated the membrane of the egg cell, the egg releases a coating on its membrane that makes it impenetrable, so that it is impossible for more than one sperm to enter and combine its DNA with the mother's DNA inside the egg. This fusion of gametes takes place in the fallopian tubes of the mother. The fallopian tubes are just that, tubes that connect the ovaries, where the eggs are produced, to the uterus. While still in the fallopian tubes, mitosis begins immediately. The zygote goes from being only a single cell to being 2 cells, then 4, then 8, and so on. After a few days, the zygote consists of around 100 cells and is now called a blastocyst. A blastocyst can be thought of as a hollow sphere of cells. All of the cells making up the blastocyst are undifferentiated, meaning they are all identical and have not begun to form different tissues or structures. These are also known as stem cells. You'll learn more about different types of stem cells in the lesson PDF. After 6 to 7 days, the blastocyst reaches the mother's uterus. It will then implant on the wall of the uterus and continue its development here until it is time for birth. Once implanted on the uterine wall, the cells of the blastocyst begin to differentiate, and this forms what is known as the embryo. How do cells differentiate? Remember that they all start out with the same DNA, but different genes will be activated in different cells, so that some cells form the heart, other cells form skin tissue, while still others will go on to form neurons and other tissues that the body needs. It's all a matter of which genes get turned on and off within each cell. The first differentiation step separates embryonic tissue from placental tissue. Not all of the cells in the blastocyst will be part of the living embryo. Instead, some will form the placenta, which is a large piece of tissue that surrounds the embryo and provides it with the nutrients it needs to grow. The placenta will be connected to the embryo by the umbilical cord and will use the cord to transfer food and oxygen from the mother to the growing embryo. The next differentiation step separates the embryonic stem cells into three primary germ layers. The cells in the ectoderm layer will eventually form the skin and parts of the nervous system. The mesoderm cells will form bones, muscles, and other organs, while the endoderm cells will form digestive tissue in the liver, thyroid, and pancreas. During the step of neurulation, the notochord forms from the mesoderm. Remember that all chordates have a notochord at some point in their development, and humans are no exception. The notochord will eventually fold into a tube that develops into the spinal cord and brain. Early in the embryonic stage, an amniotic sac forms around the embryo. It is filled with amniotic fluid, giving the embryo protection and cushioning from the organs in the mother's body. Around 8 weeks after fertilization, the embryo weighs just about 1 gram and is 1 inch long. It has some basic body structures and organs, though they are not fully developed yet. At this point, we call the embryo a fetus. The embryo is now formed enough to be considered a fetus. This means that the majority of organ systems have started developing, and over the next few months, they will become more specialized and complex. As organs develop and begin functioning independently, the fetus is able to start maintaining homeostasis on its own, instead of being completely dependent on the mother. This prepares the fetus for what life will be like outside the womb. Within 3 to 4 months after fertilization, most body parts are recognizable, and this is a common time for mothers-to-be to have an anatomy scan via ultrasound. Doctors are able to get a good look at the fetus's internal organs and make sure that everything is developing as it should. About 9 months after fertilization, the fetus is ready to be born. The mother's pituitary gland releases the hormone oxytocin, which starts a positive feedback loop that stimulates muscles in the uterus to begin a series of rhythmic contractions. These contractions will help push the fetus through the birth canal. In the hours before birth, the mother's cervix opens up to a diameter of 10 centimeters, wide enough for the baby's head to fit through. The amniotic sac breaks, releasing the fluid that was stored inside. You may often hear this process referred to as the mother's water breaking. Once the baby has been pushed from the mother's body, it immediately begins to breathe and cry on its own, taking its very first breaths of air into its lungs. Up until now, it had been relying on oxygen supplied through the umbilical cord. But now that the baby is born, the umbilical cord has finished its work and is cut from the baby, forming its belly button. The placenta and amniotic sac still have to be delivered from the mother's uterus, but this is relatively easy work compared to pushing out the baby. Within a few hours, the mother's body will begin producing breast milk as a reaction to the prolactin hormone that is secreted at birth. Remember that all mammals have mammary glands and produce milk, not just humans. So, the baby has been born. Their development is done, right? No, of course not. Your body continues growing, developing, and changing for your whole life. While the most dramatic changes definitely took place during the prenatal period, the time a fetus is growing inside of the mother, postnatal development will bring about constant change as well. During infancy, which is generally considered to last for 1 to 2 years after birth, there is rapid growth and development. The baby's weight will more than double in this time. The nervous system will develop such that the body can make coordinated movements and language can be learned. And the baby's first teeth will appear. The period of childhood begins after infancy and lasts until puberty, which usually occurs around 12 years of age. In childhood, motor coordinations develop, especially fine motor skills for things like writing or maybe playing the piano. Your permanent teeth appear, and the long bones in your arms and legs experience high rates of growth. In addition, personality develops, and your brain becomes capable of higher level reasoning. Once puberty begins, you have entered adolescence. A surge of hormones brings about new feelings and moods, as well as a growth spurt that will bring you to your adult height. The sex organs mature as well. Perhaps most importantly, your intellectual skills increase, preparing you for adulthood and independence. Even once you become an adult, your body continues to develop and go through changes. Most adults reach the physical peak of strength and coordination sometime in their 20s. By your 30s, the first signs of aging may appear, such as joints becoming less flexible and organ systems becoming less efficient. As your body continues to age, it becomes harder for it to maintain homeostasis, and you may find that you have to slow your activity level to compensate for this new challenge. However, in the absence of conditions such as Alzheimer's disease or dementia, it is likely that your mind will continue functioning at a high level until a very old age, as long as you keep it engaged and active. As we went through the lesson today, we looked at all the stages of development that humans go through, starting from a tiny single-celled zygote all the way to a mature adult. Along the way, we saw how the processes we've previously learned about in this course, such as mitosis, meiosis, and the activity of genes, play an important role in our life cycle. In the next lesson, it will be time for you to review what you have learned in this unit on the human body and take the unit assessment. Until then, remember that biology isn't just science, it's the way of life.